We as an audience are so used to having our films critiqued by others, academics, professionals, and they seem as though they're the only ones in the industry that are being listened to. Specifically, modern media has expanded and given audiences a chance to critique films by their own rulebook. This first started by what is commonly known as the bechdel test, named after cartoonist Alison Bechdel. The concept was introduced in a 1985 strip of hers called Dykes to Watch Out For. In said strip, two women are discussing whether or not to see a film. One of them says she will only watch a film that satisfies three basic requirements, which are now the requirements for the test. These are that the film has at least two women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. This, however, presents a problem. The truth is, while it's a good test, it's also terrible to pass or fail a movie on it. I mean, what if these characters had just that one dialogue together and never again show up? What if they're not even main characters? Thus we have Guillermo del Toro's love letter to Japanese pop culture, Pacific Rim, burst onto the silver screen with two noticeable women characters, the militaristic and intimidating Jaeger pilot Alexis Kayadovsky, and the more important character, Mako Mori.
Remember, it's about compatibility. It's a dialogue, not a fight. But I'm not gonna dial down my moves.
Okay. Then neither will I.
However, these women don't talk to each other, a failure in the eyes of the Bechdel test. However, to dismiss Pacific Rim outright would be throwing away one of the most nuanced secondary characters in recent blockbuster history. Guillermo del Toro describes her as such. I was very careful how I built the movie. One of the other things I decided was that I wanted a female lead who has the equal force as the male leads. She's not going to be a sex kitten, she's not going to come out in cutoff shorts and a tank top, and it's going to be a real earnestly drawn character. Indeed, the character of Mako Mori was so influential that she too has created her own test, developed by a Tumblr fan whose requirements are as follows. That film has at least one female character who gets her own narrative arc that is not about supporting a man's story. Now we are starting to get a better idea of how nuanced and complicated judging films really is, and how striking a feminist tone isn't just about how much ass a female character can kick, or how much she can emasculate the men around her. Thus, we reach another film that not only generated waves of controversy when erupted on screen, but also created our next test. Mad Max Fury Road at first seems to be an utter guy movie. There's cars, fire, explosions, just sheer vehicular violence. Yet when released, tons of men complained on the internet that it was a trick, that it was all about girls and poor Max got shunned from the spotlight. Thus, the ironically named Furiosa test was born, in which a film passes if it causes quote-unquote misogynists to boycott it. While this may seem like a tongue-in-cheek or purposely aggressive platform, Jamie Rigetti of Film School Rejects poses it as such. It's no longer enough to simply cast a female character. Fans are becoming increasingly vocal about the dire need for strong and diverse female characters. And strong, diverse characters indeed are the women in Mad Max, and the film takes many tropes and turns them on their head. For example, Imperator Furiosa in this desert wasteland is captain of the Big Rig, a huge oil truck. Her gender is never once mentioned, and her physical appearance matches all the crazies she works with. Bald head, greased up face, heck, she even has a missing arm. Her sexuality isn't touched on because it's a superfluous fact in a world of thirst, sand, and blood. Meanwhile, Max in the starting act of the film is captured and turned into a living blood transfusion for one of the sick war boys. The young wives of Immortan and Joe are smuggled out because they refuse to be used as objects. In essence, each character is victimized and seen as a tool rather than a person, regardless of gender. Later in the movie, we run across a woman naked in some kind of distress. Max knows immediately it's a trap, and Furiosa, who is looking for her long-lost home beyond the desert, says she remembers her old clan doing the same thing. We meet this clan of many mothers, and even though they're wrinkled and lovable old matrons, they're killers. They just use one of their own as bait, and when the crew decides to drive back to their oasis, they take up arms and act just as ruthless and violent as the men. Heck, in the end, Max doesn't really even matter to the narrative. He ends up disappearing in the crowd at the finale. If he hadn't shown up, it would have still happened that Furiosa would have escaped with the brides and attempt a harrowing escape to freedom. Max was just along for the ride.